Possibly the crocodile. Give me a break, you moron. Leviathan was not a crocodile, okay?
Yeah, well, the translators of the NIV are evangelicals that probably don't believe in dragons because they've been taught dragons are fake and
But I'll tell you,
dinosaurs.
Wikipedia has some
So
very interesting pictures
yeah,
of what they think Leviathan was.
yeah, but
Very scary, I'll tell you.
yep. All right, we're back on, everyone. Shalom. We are going to be closing out our study for today with 2 chapters of Ayub. We're finishing up Ayub today. Sister Marissa is going to be starting us off with chapter 41. Let me just get my.
Okay. I'm going to read out of the Bretons.
All right, cool. Let me just get my screen showing here. Okay. All right, almost there. Let's go to chapter 41. Okay. All right. All right. Whenever you're ready, sis.
Okay. Give me a sec here. Job 41. Okay. Has you not has you not seen him, and have you not wondered at the things said of him? Do you not fear because preparation has been made by me? For who is there that resists me? Or who will resist me and abide, since the whole world under heaven is mine?
Oh, sis, next chapter.
Job 41.
Yeah, it should be. I'm wondering if in your let's see, I wonder if the chapter numberings might be off. So go to the next chapter where it starts talking about the serpent or Leviathan.
The next one says, then Job answered and said to Yahuwah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you know what? Let me read it out of my Hallelujah scriptures.
Sure.
No, I'm gonna read it out of ISR.
Okay. All right.
Okay, would you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Would you put a cord through his nose, or pierce his jaw with a hook? Would he keep on pleading with you? Would he speak softly to you? Would he make a covenant with you to be taken as a servant forever? Would you play with him as with a bird, or leech him for your young girls? Would trading partners bargain over him? Would they divide him among the merchants? Fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Put your hand on him. Think of the struggle. Do not do it again. See, any expectation of him is disappointed. He is laid low even at the sight of him. No one is so foolhardily to wake him up. Who then is able to stand against me? Who has given to me first that I should repair him under all the heavens that is mine? I would not keep silent concerning his limbs, or his mighty power, or his fair frame. Who shall take off the surface of his skin? Who approaches him with a double bridle? Who shall open the doors of his face with his frightened teeth all around? Rows of scales are his pride, closed up a binding seal. One to the other they fit closely, not even a breath enters between them. They are joined one to another, they are stick together and are not separated. His sneezing flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go firebrands, sparks of fire shoot out.
Mm.
Out of his nostrils comes smoke, like a boiling pot or kettle. His breath sets coals of fire on fire, and a flame goes out of his mouth. Strength dwells in his neck, and fear leaps before him. The folds of his flesh cleave together. They are firm on him, immovable. His heart is as hard as a stone, even as hard as the lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. Because of his crashings, they are bewildered. No sword that reaches him does prevail, neither spear, darts, or lance. He reckons iron as a straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow does not make him flee. Slain stones become like stubble to him. Clubs are reckoned as straw. He laughs at the rattle of a lance. His undersides are like sharp potsherds. He sprawls on the mud like a threshing sledge. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. His leaves a shining path behind him. One would think the deep to be gray-haired. No one on earth is like him, one made without fear. He sees all that is haughty. He is sovereign over all the sons of pride. So is Leviathan like considered like T-Rex or whatever?
He's, yeah, I would say like probably a better idea would be like Godzilla. Like when you see those movies, Godzilla goes in the sea and all that. It like destroys the ships and all that. Yeah, that's what Leviathan is like. T-Rex would be like
Also on land,
what happened?
living in water, but also able to come on land.
Probably, yeah. I don't know if it has legs. I don't know. It's hard to tell if he would be a mammal that could be on land as well. I don't know. I know that Leviathan usually is depicted as a sea dragon, like a dragon without wings, like a sea serpent. And what's interesting is that the only thing I like Brenton, but he needs to stop mistranslating dragon as serpent. It really pisses me off. I don't know why he does this, and like that gets people confused because our modern day understanding of you know of a serpent is a little snake. Um,
The LXXC is actually not pulling from the Bretons in this case,
Okay.
because Marissa was actually reading the right chapter. I'm looking at the Britons on and Bible, and I'm also looking at the Lexham. And when you get farther in the chapter, you can see that it's saying the same thing, but the way that it starts off is completely different. It doesn't
Yeah.
even have anything about a dragon or about Leviathan. It just
Yeah,
says
it doesn't even mention Leviathan.
says, "Have you not marveled at the things that are said, nor feared, because it has been prepared by me? Or who is the one who stands against me, or who shall stand against me and endure? When all that is under the Shemayim is mine, I shall not keep silent by reason of it." Skipping forward, who shall uncover the face of its garment, or who can possibly, skipping forward, there's fear in the circle of its teeth, its insides, or it just skips over it. It reads completely different in the Britons. It's the same chapter though, because later on it has everything that it.
I don't know why it does that. That's weird because the LXXE is supposed to be a Brenton's. Maybe it's a revised Brenton's, but
It
on the
must be
monster,
two different. LXXE has to be pulling from two different manuscripts because it seems that Brent is pulling from a completely different manuscript.
yeah. The Apostolic Bible Polyglot though is showing that that verse where it says serpent, it should actually say dragon. And whoever the LXXE is basing their translation off of, it's weird. They mistranslate this Greek word drakon like so many times. Um, But yeah, to explain it, it's a sea dragon. It's like I would say more like a dragon you see in the Chinese mythology, where you have the little arms, and it's like basically a giant serpent. It's like a giant snake is how the dragons are looked like. Kind of like in mythology, you've heard of the basilisk. That's kind of what a leviathan probably looks like, but it's like a sea serpent, sea dragon type of creature, and it's
Well,
been
the Chinese people during the Chinese New Year, you know how they have that
Mhm.
tradition where they put the head of some kind of animal, and then there's people behind him with this long, like a snake, and they have those bells that ching 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 ching. Ching. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep,
I think
the
so, yeah.
symbols and all that. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds like they worship Leviathan.
yeah. I think they do. A lot of cultures worship dragons, not just Leviathan, but dragons in general. A lot of cultures, and I think it goes back to Satan worship because they in the occult they think Leviathan is Satan. And even in Kabbalism, they mistaken Leviathan for Satan. So, like, you go to like the ISR, right? If you go into, because it's using Masoretic text here, you go to verse 34. It says, "He's the king over all the sons of pride." Most Christians that have read that verse think that means that Satan is Leviathan. Now, if you go to the LXXE, or I think any LXX will show you this. He beholds every high thing. He is the king of all that are in the waters. Now, if you take that literally, that's just saying he's the king of the ocean. It's not saying that he's the king of the wicked. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like the Kabbalists wanted you to think that Leviathan was Satan. Because in Kabbalism, and you can look this up, like Jewish angelology, I think it's called, um, they believe there's a Leviathan principality and all that. So that goes back into like the Judean fables and legends and all that. So the Masoretes are kind of pulling from. It seems like they're pulling from Kabbalistic legend. Why they changed that verse to say he's the king of all the waters. When they made their version of this book of Job, they changed that verse to say he's the king of all the children of pride, which is king of sinners or the king of the wicked. So that's why Christians think that Leviathan is Satan. But when you look at the Septuagint version, it reads completely different in that verse. And anyway, me and Brother Yahusha actually did an expose about this and how there's proof that the Masoretes seem to be putting Kabbalistic theology into that verse and into that chapter. So I really recommend the study. Satan is not Leviathan, or Leviathan's not Satan or a demon study we did way back. I think I would really recommend that to people because the Kabbalists themselves like worship a serpent king Messiah. If I'm not mistaken, they like worship a satanic, like the higher up occultic like Kabbalists. They worship a serpent king and all that. So it's like in their theology. So anyway, so anyone that's interested, check that out. But that's one of the reasons, one of the reasons it's tube to have a Septuagint handy with chapters like that, because that creates a whole new doctrine. Oh, Leviathan's he's the father of all the children of pride or all the wicked. That doesn't blend with the rest of the chapter. It completely goes off, into a whole nother thing. And a lot of people today think there's like a real Leviathan demon or principality, and you'll see spiritual warfare ministries in Christianity casting out a Leviathan spirit, where as far as we know in scripture, there's no principality called Leviathan, there's no angel called Leviathan. And so that comes from like Kabbalistic Jewish mystic theology. And all that. So if you guys are interested, definitely check out that video we did. We go into depth about the history of that belief system, where that comes from, and all that. So
But Doug, that's interesting because in the ISR it mentions Leviathan, but in the Britons, it doesn't. In the beginning of chapter 41, in the Britons, it doesn't even say anything about a dragon.
I figured
I wonder, yeah,
actually,
I wonder if
it-
Brenton
you
was
gotta go back.
from a Brenton could have been pulling from a manuscript that had that omission.
No, he's not.
Oh, okay.
I figured it out. It's
Chapter-
that part you have to go back to chapter 40. It's at the end of chapter 40.
Yeah.
Wisdom has it in verse 21, and then Britons would have it in verse 24. The end of towards the end, like verse was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe about the last 7 verses in chapter 40
Yeah.
are verse 41 in the LXXE and then the Masoretic.
Yeah.
But it's in there. All of that is in there. You just got to go back a chapter.
Yeah, it's the end of chapter 40 is what brother here. I can see it on my mind. It's in the parentheses here in blue. 40 verse 20 is 41 verse 1 in the Masoretic. So you would have Leviathan or the aka the Dracon mentioned in verse 20 of chapter 40. And then it goes on and eventually it starts going into 41 in the LXX, but it basically you don't get to chapter 41 technically in the Bretons until you're at 41 verse 11 or verse 10 in the Masoretic. It's weird like that. The chapter numberings is what confuses people. It's the chapter numberings because that's all tradition anyway. When the original scriptures did not have chapter breaks and headers and this and that, so that's what confuses people because translators pick and choose whatever chapter numberings they want to give verses and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the confusing part. The major difference actually between the Masoretic, though, just to note, is that Leviathan's name is not mentioned ever in the Septuagint. Wherever it says Leviathan, the majority of the time it will say in the Greek Dracon, like dragon. So that's how we know it's a sea dragon because it's literally called a dragon. So I wonder if even the name Leviathan is a tradition. I wonder like if Yahuwah ever really originally named his sea dragons Leviathan. I kind of wonder where that tradition comes from. Because you see in other mythologies, they'll give the sea dragons different names, like Tiamat was the sea dragon of the Babylonians, and all that. So I kind of wonder.
Look out for me. I
Yeah.
gotta log off and get back on.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha, sis. Gotcha. So yeah, so I don't even know if Leviathan would have originally been called Leviathan. If that was more of a rabbinical tradition because you don't see that ever in the Septuagint. Like where it says Leviathan, it just says dragon. So it's kind of like that. That might have been something the Masoretes started was naming it Leviathan. I wonder if I was to look up the name Leviathan, how early that was in usage among the Hebrews. That name. Because I found something interesting about Shaddai, but I'm going to hold my peace on that until we, do a study about that. But Shaddai even seems to be a rabbinically influenced thing, and why the Septuagint never has Al Shaddai. It always wherever it says Al Shaddai in the Masoretic, it will say my Elohim or my Alua. So it's very weird like that too. So that's just something to keep in mind that Leviathan might have been not even a name you who originally gave it. That could have been a name that the scribes at the time decided, oh, we're going to name it, even though Yahuwah never gave it a name, and all that. So, but there's definitely sea dragons. They're definitely in existence. They're real. I believe that's where the Loch Ness Monster legends come from. I believe that's where a lot of these sea dragon legends come from. Almost every culture has sea dragons and dragons with wings, like both. you'll see multiple types of dragons in ancient cultures, like the ones with the wings, and then there's the dragons that look more like a snake, just a giant serpent type of dragon that only has little itty bitty arms but has no legs, and stuff like that. So I mean, you see that in a lot of ancient cultures. The Chinese, like Sister Marissa brought up, yeah, they definitely worship dragons, but they're not the only culture. Many cultures worship dragons. Um, and I think a lot of it has to go back to the worship of Satan, because Satan, in scripture, allegorically is referred to as the dragon of old, the serpent of old. I believe that Satan appeared to be like in that form in the garden. He was in a seraphim type of angel form in the garden, and that's probably why you get all this dragon worship after the fall, because all these cultures, especially from the flood on, were worshiping fallen Malachim. So they're worshiping, possibly certain fallen Malachim are seraphim, which look, have a similar appearance to a dragon, like a dragon-like angel. And that's where I surmise that possibly that's where you get the whole dragon worship, in my opinion. But anyway. So I think that's it. I'm trying to see who else hasn't had a chance to read.
Sister Milka wanted to read.
Yeah. Let's do that. Sister Milka, would you like to read chapter 41?
Yeah.
I mean 42. No.
Yeah. Yes. I'm reading from the Sefer.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. All right. Chapter 42. Let me get that on the screen here. Let me just get 42 on the screen so people can follow along. I'm trying to see what translation would be similar. I think why is it doing this? That is strange. Okay, hold on. Oh, that's weird. Hold on, guys. Zoom is messing. Share screen. Share screen. All right. 42. All right, go ahead, sis.
All right. Then Eov answered Yahuwah and said, I know that you can do everything, and that no thought can be withheld from you. Who is he that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understand not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech you, and I will speak. I will demand of you, and declare unto me. I have heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. And it was so that after Yahuwah had spoken these words unto Job, Yahuwah said to Eliphaz and Temani, my wrath is kindled against you, and against your two friends, for you have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job has. Therefore, take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourself an ascending smoke offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you, and for him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, in that ye have spoken the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz and Temani and Bildad and Shush and Sophar, the Namathi, and did according as Yahuwah commanded them. Yahuwah also accepted Job. And Yahuwah turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also Yahuwah gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that Yahuwah had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and everyone an earring of gold. So Yahuwah baruched the latter end of Job more than his beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep and 6,000 camels and 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 she asses. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Yemima, 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 and the name of the second Kedisha, and the name of the third Karan Hapuk. And in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Yov. And their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. After this lived Yov 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons, even 4 generations. So Yov died being old and full of days. Praise Yahuwah.
Hmm. Oh, Mazarites, why you gotta leave things out? Why you gotta leave things out?
What did they leave out?
It is written, he will rise again with those whom Yahuwah raises up. So this is the LXX right here on the screen. This man is described in the Syriac book as living in the land of Uz on the borders of Idumea, Edom, and Arabia. His name before was Ubab. Having taken an Arabian wife, he begot a son whose name was Enon, and he himself was the son of his father Zerah, one of the sons of Esau, and of his mother Bosora, that he was the 5th from Abraham. These were the kings who reigned in Edom, which country he also ruled over. It's interesting, we were reading about him earlier. Balak, son of Beor, and the name of his city was Denabah. But after Balak, Ubab, who is called Ub, and after him Asam, who is governor of the country of Teman, and after him Adad, the son of Barad, who destroyed Midian in the plain of Moab. And the name of his city was Gethaim. And his friends who came to him were Eliphaz of the children of Esau, the king of the Temanites, Beldad, Suab of the Sukians, Sufar, king of the Minians. So that whole paragraph the Masoretic leaves out. So it gives you basically his upbringing as a Edomite. Seems like he would have reigned after Balak died. So Balak we just read about earlier, is Numbers 23. So that means Ubab would have been, or Ayub would have been reigning, I guess, after Balak died. So possibly the latter part of the book of Numbers. So that's around the time he would have reigned. There's been many traditions, just to kind of give you guys some Jewish traditions even about when Job would have been living during the time of the scriptures. According to Jewish opinion, they believe that he would have been born either around the time of, I think it was Masha's dad's time. They believe somewhere around there, Masha's father's generation, and maybe by the time he starts to rule as king, he would have been at the end of his life. So there's a lot of interesting traditions about him. There's a tradition about him in the Targum that he was the servant of Pharaoh who feared Yahuwah and brought his animals in. So where it talks about in Exodus 9, was it Exodus 9:20, I think, where it says, he who feared Yahuwah, he of the servants of Pharaoh that feared the word of Yahuwah gathered his cattle into the houses. So the tradition in one of the Targums is that the he that's being referred to is Job before he converted. He would have been, there's all different types of extra biblical traditions of him being the name of Ubab as supposedly serving the Pharaoh of the Exodus at one point in time, and all interesting traditions about that. But yeah, the Masoretic text leaves that whole background of his out of there, and that's why people don't even realize he was an ethnic Edomite originally, and so he would have been grafted in. But yeah, it's very interesting. So he's the 5th from Abraham, so that kind of gives us an idea of when he would have been born. 5 generations from Abraham. So give or take, let's say a generation's 120 years or a little less. He would have been born about, I would say, what, 520 years or what? What's one? Let's just do the math real quick. 120 times 5, so that'd be what, almost 600
Mhm.
years after Abraham. So so give or take, whenever Abraham died, 600 years from Abraham,
Mhm.
you know, that's when he was born. So that's why he was.
That's if that definition of generation is consistent, because it seems like it's like they go back and forth between a generation being like, okay, I'm a generation, and then if I had children, they would be a generation, and then if it seems to go back and forth between putting an actual number on it and not putting a number on it, which is confusing.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then the adding to confusion is people take that one verse from David completely out of context. Our days are 70 years, 80 years by strength. So people think 80 years is like a generation just from that one verse. So that, yeah, there's a lot of things that confuses that. Um, Even let's just say, right, how old though were they starting to have children? Let's say generation is as soon as you have a son, right? New generation starts. One's like the earliest one, they would be having children, like 100 years, a couple 100 years. So, there even if we did it by that, you're still talking about 1 to 200 years per generation if we did it by that. I don't think men were having children before they're at least 100, 200 years old, even after the flood. So realistically, let's say we go by that definition for generation, that every time a son is born or daughter is born, that's a new generation. You would at least be 100, 200 years for a generation. So, um, you know, even with that, that's roughly between 600 to 1200 years after Abraham. So, it does fit with the narrative that he would have reigned after Balak, because obviously, that's many, many generations after Abraham. So, it makes sense. Now, I think where the rough thing is trying to figure out when exactly he was born, you know, that's where the contention is whose generation of the patriarchs of scripture would he be in? Now, if it's 1200 years later, obviously he's not going to be in Moshe's generation. Um, if it's closer to 1,000 years later, then he would obviously be a lot younger than we would think. Around the time of Numbers 23 or 24. But it's speculatory at this point. We just know that he's the fifth from Abraham. He reigned after Balak, who we read about earlier. So that means he didn't become a king of Edom until after Balak died, which would have been between like Numbers 24 and 26, somewhere around there. So but it's interesting. That whole backstory, though, I think is important because it shows another grafting in concept that we didn't even know about, because the Masoretes wanted, oh, he's an Edomite. We hate the Edomites. No, we gotta get rid of that story. No, we can't let people know that Job was an Edomite. And I could see them hating, push it down. They don't want people to know that you got a ethnic Gentile grafted in. That's one of the basically one of the most important patriarchs, and so that would make them not want to esteem Ayub so much. And I think there was definitely an agenda with that. Why they would take away that part of the chapter for no reason does not make any sense to me. Other than they want you to think that Ayub was a Hebrew, like ethnic Hebrew. That's the only thing I can think of. Go ahead, brother Yahusha.
It just really makes no sense why they would take that out and then leave so many other accounts of people being grafted in, like Caleb, Ruth, and then you got dude's family, his whole line coming from Ruth, or coming through Ruth. So it's just they're not very thorough.
I would like to try to figure out if
You're cutting in and out.
oh, I'm cutting in and out here. Sorry about that. No, I would like to on my own just kind of try to figure out with a genealogy what 5 generations from Abraham would be, like where that would be. We know Isaac's one generation, Isaac's children would be another generation, so that's 2 generations. And we could maybe kind of do some guesswork and try to figure out where exactly he would have been born, what generation he would have been born of the Hebrews' history. It would be interesting to find out because how many generations, Mom, was Masha from Abraham? 7? Let me see here. When they have, I know it's not perfect, but let me go to a BibleHub.com timeline and try to get a decent idea.
I believe 6. You had, let's see, Abraham. Oh, no, from Abraham, maybe 5. You have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Louis, and then I believe he would have been a grandson of Louis. So let me see. What was that? Isaac, Jacob, Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no V in the. So yeah, you got that.
Exodus.
Trying to see. Israel,
Where's what chapter has Moses or Masha's lineage where it talks about
Exodus 1, I believe.
no, there's another one that
Oh,
goes
no, never mind. Chapter 2. Never mind. Chapter
there's
2.
another one that goes more in depth.
Yeah, chapter 2, it says birth and adoption.
No, not this one either.
So, according to they're at least talking about Abraham, Masha, at least. That seems kind of short to me. Only 500 years in between, but I mean, if that's the case, then you would have Ayub being already 100 years old by the time Masha was born, like give or take. So if that's the case, because if Masha is the 6th from Abraham and Ayub is the 5th, you would at least have 100 years. He would be 100 years old before Masha was born. It's just weird. I wonder if he's born. I wonder. Yeah, I wonder how old he would have been then. Job. He would have been pretty old by the time he's the king of Edom. Then he would have been like between 200 or 300 years.
Exodus 6. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay, Exodus 6. Yeah, but let's see here. I established my covenant with them. Go to the children of Yasharal. I don't see it yet. I'm at verse 12. I still don't see it. Oh, here we go. 14. Sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, Yasharal, Hanuk, Balus, Hazrun, Carmi. This is the kindred of Reuben. So that's interesting. Reuben had a Hanuk. Interesting.
He's actually the great grandson of Louis, not grandson. So 6 generations from Abraham.
Now, thinking, if that's the case, then if a generation is like, as soon as you have a son, we would have to try to find out when's the earliest that the patriarchs would have children. Like, at what age were they having children? Because if they're having,
I'm not necessarily saying that. I was just using generation like loosely.
yeah, I'm just saying that is true though. That you could even have you already 100 before before Masha would be born. That would be kind of interesting if he's that old already. It's not surprising. I mean, people are living to be 200-300, right after the flood. It's not that surprising. Um, Even right after the flood, they were more than that. I think some were living to what, 400-500. So very possible that's definitely realistic. Now, if it's a little bit less, if we took the traditional Psalms route, that 70, 80 years is a generation, you would have him even younger than that. You would possibly have Ayub like 70, 80 years old when Masha is born. Um, so yeah, definitely something interesting to look up and think about. Definitely something interesting. So yeah, good. What it does seem like though is that he became that king of Edom, according to the LXX, after Balak. So, and what's interesting, Sister Milka, you read it said 140 years, right? In the from chapter 42, I think you read.
Yeah, it's at 140.
Interesting, because LXX says 170, so I find that interesting that the LXX would kind of show that he could have lived even longer than that. So if we were just to roughly try to figure this out, he could have at least lived 270 total years. Yeah. Verse 16 in LXX says, Job lived after his affliction 170 years. All the years he lived were 240. All right, I was close. 240. And Ayub saw his sons and his sons' sons, the fourth generation. His sons is hmm. Yeah, I think we lacked understanding of what a generation is, because even with this verse, it's saying that Job to his sons to his grandchildren are somehow 4 generations. So I think there's definitely a lack of understanding there. Um, us humans not really understanding what a generation is scripturally. Because to me, if I was just to count that from begetting children, that would only be 3 generations. So I don't know how the text would get 4 generations there if it's just one child, a father has a child, that's 1 generation like that. Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion in the word about that. Yeah, because it seems like it kind of goes back and forth between what a real generation is. So, but anyway, so supposedly according to LXX here, he lived to be 240 years. So, hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So, anyway, I don't think there's anything else I wanted to bring up because I think we expounded this to death here. I don't think there's any other extrapolation I could take from this chapter. So, yeah. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this study today, and hopefully you got some edification from it. Please stay tuned, everyone. You who are willing, we will be doing. We will be back next Shabbat, and we'll be going further into First Corinthians Sabbath evenings. And you who are willing, will be going we'll be going deeper into Numbers. We're probably going to be doing, Yahuwah willing, 4 chapters of Numbers on Sabbath day because, now we're done with Ayub. So, yeah. So please stay tuned, everyone. Shabbat Shalom to all of our Mishpach out there. Have a great rest of your Sabbath.